Hello and welcome to the Science of Getting Rich for Women podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Marie. I am a radical money coach, a money consciousness mentor, helping you become debt free and rich with mathematical certainty. I'm here with my co host, Amy Bell, who's behind the scenes right now. And I am so excited to be back again with you for another week of this transformative, life changing book, The Science of Getting Rich for Women now. And today we're going to be talking about chapter 2. But I just want to mention before we get into this is that we have said from the very beginning when we launched this on International Women's Day just 2 weeks ago that we are literally building the plane as we fly it. You know, this idea of sharing this book and this message with you in a podcast has happened so quickly that we're literally building the plane as we fly it. So today, I hope you like our new upgraded platform. We've got some beautiful graphics and some beautiful colors to go along with it. Who knows what will happen next week? Every single week, there's going to be upgrades and expansions and elevations, and you're going to watch before your very eyes how this creation is just expanding, just as you are. We all are. So today I am back to talk about chapter 2. Thanks for joining me, Amy. I'm so glad you're here. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I am Jessica's partner in crime as we navigate the science of getting rich for women. And I've spent my career doing design and branding. And when Jessica approached me with doing this project, this publication for her, I was like, I'm in. And so we've joined in the creation of the actual book itself, and now we're starting this conversation to keep it going because, like we've been saying last week and the last couple of weeks, it's a study book. It's not a read one and done kind of dealio. So we're just going to keep the conversation going.
That's right. That's right. And Amy is a master graphic designer. She is responsible for all these beautiful images and colors that you are seeing, just so you know. Because everyone always says, Amy, how beautiful the cover is. And it really is. It's just so opulent. So that's the word that keeps coming to my mind when I see that graphic, and the colors. It's so rich, so rich. And the word rich is in big letters on the copy. We love the idea of getting rich. In fact, that was the conversation last week, which is all about your right to be rich and how, we have an inherent desire to be rich and to become wealthy so that we can be more, have more, do more, leave behind more. And so it's all about becoming more and getting rich and getting rid of the old shame around being rich and having lots of money. So, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm getting excited. Our first comment. User. So if you can grant StreamYard access, they will use your name and your name will appear. Unless you want to stay invisible, that's cool too. Incognito is can be a vibe. But thank you so much. You are
This is from Lisa Charmaine.
Oh my gosh, Lisa. Oh, awesome. I love you,
Lisa
Lisa.
doesn't want to be incognito, I don't think. She's cool with us saying it. So thanks for joining us, Lisa. This is our first week of going live on many platforms. So we're on Facebook, in the Facebook group, in Jessica's Facebook page, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on YouTube. And so it's pretty cool that we have these platforms to be able to do this. So next level in getting rich, man, we're going to put it out there.
Yes, yes. So this is the thing, ladies, Amy's been studying this book longer than I have, not that much longer, but I know you got into it last year. So let's say you've been studying it for a year. And, at the end of last year, I was introduced to it and I was hooked, line and sinker. And I'm going to read to you the quote that literally hooked me in. It's at the beginning of chapter 2, which is perfect that we're discussing it here today. So listen to me read this opening to chapter 2. And I want to know from you, do you get excited? Do you come alive? Like, does your energy elevate when you hear these words? There is a science of getting rich. It is an exact science like algebra or arithmetic. There are certain laws which govern the process of acquiring riches. And once these laws are learned and obeyed by any woman, she will get rich with mathematical certainty. Now, when I read those words, I was hooked. I was blown away. I was in resistance somewhat because I thought that's such a bold statement. How can anybody make that claim? But being who I am, someone who desires riches and wealth, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to test this out. I'm going to create an experiment. And for 90 days, I am going to live by these principles. And so, like a scientist, I began with the question, I wonder what would happen if I learned these laws and I obeyed them. And I hypothesized. I've been collecting data as I've been learning and integrating these principles. And today is day 82. My science experiment has not concluded yet. But what I can tell you is that what has unfolded throughout these 82 days is nothing short of magical, of miraculous to me. It's so exciting and so powerful that this just has to be shared with you. Because if this is possible for me, it's possible for you. It's possible for anyone, right, Amy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm still doing some techie stuff behind the scenes, and I was,
yeah. No
but
worries.
yes, I agree. This whole chapter that we're talking about, there is a science of getting rich. So we're on chapter 2 this week. Um, I I liked how they were talking about the fact that it doesn't matter where you live or what your background is or who you are. If you do this, if you apply the science of getting rich to yourself and you follow the certain way and you do what the book says, then it's with mathematical precision that this can happen.
Mm. Exactly. And that is what chapter 2 is all about. You know, it goes on to state that natural law, and by the way, natural laws are not man-made or woman-made for that matter. And so women and men, they can't manipulate these laws. These are just natural laws, like gravity. You know, we can't, gravity is, it just is. And so there are natural laws to the universe. And actually, the next chapter, I think, goes into it. But for this chapter, the only thing that is relevant here is the natural law of cause and effect. And it states that like causes always produce like effects. And therefore, any woman who learns to do things in this certain way will infallibly get rich. The whole book or this whole chapter, well, the whole book as well, goes on to talk about this certain way. You'll hear this certain way, and it's almost like mysterious as you're reading it because you're like, just tell me what the certain way is. I want to know what the certain way is, right? So it
Yeah,
takes
well,
somebody.
I think if you know it, you know it. And if you don't know it, then you just have to read this book and find out what he's talking about. There's lots of other texts out there that speak about doing things in a certain way and putting it all together. So this one sort of takes you on a bit of a secret journey until you can sort of sort it out yourself. But I think he's trying to get you to go, oh, what is that? And then when the light bulb goes off, then it's your realization. It's not him telling you in like this
Ah,
is the certain way. So you got to kind of unravel it a little bit in your brain as you're reading through the chapters, and then the certain way is kind of moving it along, really, like taking that action and doing what you need to do to move forward. And so we're doing that all the time. We're in groups, we're making connections, we're building relationships, we're doing all of that. And and as long as you keep consistent with that and you don't give up and you have persistence, which is another thing, like keep the persistence going, keep the desire going, then then eventually it's revealed, and it's like a beautiful thing. You're like, oh, okay, so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and read this book and study this book and then add in their little bits, and then all of a sudden you've got something really exciting happening.
I love what you just said about it clicking for yourself, and how like it kind of guides you along, and then you have this realization for yourself, and when you do, it's almost like an epiphany, and because of that, it lands so much more powerfully in your consciousness, and you're like, oh my gosh, like a light bulb goes off, and it just clicks, and you just get it. And then once you get it, you always have it. It's like once you see something, it's like the faces, the two faces in the vase. If you always see the vase every time and then one day you're like, oh my gosh, I see two faces. You can never look at that image again the same way. You'll always see, the two faces, because it's now in your awareness, in your consciousness. And that's what this book is about. It's about expanding your understanding, your consciousness about the world, about how things are created, and how powerful you are to create wealth. And I'm not even just talking about abundance, I'm talking about real wealth, like riches, like money. You are so powerful. And he talks in this chapter about how it has nothing to do with talent. It has nothing to do with environment. It has nothing to do with being thrifty or being a saver, because you can look at different people and go, oh, well, she's rich because she was always thrifty and she was always a saver. Or she's rich because, well, she was born into a family that was successful. But actually, it has nothing to do with that, because if it did, everyone who was a saver or thrifty would be rich. And you all know that there are many people who are thrifty who, are poor. And so it has nothing to do with environment or ability or talent, because there are blockheads that get rich.
I was wondering if you were going to go there. Oh my God. Yeah. Right? Yes. There's stupid women, there's smart women, there's talented women, there's all kinds of women who are not rich. And then there are those in the same, like there's stupid women and smart women and talented women that are rich. So the only difference between the two is the way with which they get to the riches. And once, we discover, coming, like, I guess in chapter 4 is really my fave, like the first principle.
It's getting rich. Oh, I can't wait to get to that chapter. You just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say, I've got up here comment book if you would like to get a copy of the ebook. So Jessica is giving away the ebook. We do not want to restrict this information from any woman on the planet. We want it accessible to everyone who can actually access a PDF or read it somehow. And just get your hands on it and start reading it electronically. Now, I bought the paper version of both the original and this one because I like to make notes and highlight stuff and write. And so we've just sort of upgraded this one. We're on like 2.0 version of this book, which is, we're just waiting for Amazon to upload it. But we've actually put into the book note pages at the end of every chapter so that you can write out. And when Jessica is giving you contemplation and expansion ideas at the end of each chapter, there's now behind that a notes and sometimes 2 pages where you can write notes. So that was a thing that we had comments about. Jessica had people saying, it'd be really great if there was note pages at the end of every chapter. So we're listening and we're adding and we're adapting, and we really want to make this book as useful and integratable into your way of learning as possible. So we're just waiting for that to go up. but it's coming. So we have many additions. I think this little guy's gonna evolve as we go.
Absolutely. I mean, it's expanding just as we are expanding. Everything in our universe is constantly expanding, and it's so exciting. You know, I love chapter 2, because first of all, he's talking about there is a science to getting rich. And it's like, I've never heard that before, Amy. Like, there is a science to getting rich. This was the first time I'd ever heard that. Now, I know this book has sold millions of copies. It's 114 years old, um, but I hadn't been introduced to it. I don't know where I was living, but I had not been introduced to it. And so when I started reading the book, just the title, this there is a science to getting rich, fascinated me. And then when I asked the ladies in my membership if they wanted to do a study group with me on this book, almost all of them already had this book. So I wouldn't be surprised if you too already have this book, maybe an older version or the original copy, somewhere on your bookshelf. And maybe this is your sign, this is your invitation to pull it off the shelf, to start reading it, because it's absolutely fascinating. And honestly, for me, the most fascinating and exciting thing is the experiment, because it is actually showing me, and as a result, able to show you what happens when you study and integrate these principles. Because like we said, this is not a book to read once and put down. No, this is a lifelong book. This is one that you study. I will be reading this book, I think, for the rest of my life, because every time I read it, I see something different. I integrate or download something more. And it could just be a word or a sentence that it didn't really catch my attention before, but now it's catching my attention. That goes into my consciousness, seeps down into my subconsciousness. Next thing you know, it's connecting to my emotions, which is affecting my vibration, the way I feel. Then I go out into the world. And now when I'm at the checkout at the grocery store, I'm realizing that my energy and my frequency has an effect on the woman at the cashier, how my behavior and the way I interact with her actually has an effect on my results. We'll get into that a little bit more in chapter 15, I think, the increasing woman. But the whole thing is, there is a science to getting rich. And if you are curious enough or excited enough, or even like to the contrary enough, where you're like, this can't be real, that you are actually willing to study this book yourself, maybe even do your own experiment and see what happens. He says you cannot fail. That failure is impossible, is what he actually says. And I have been witnessing and experiencing this myself. And the thing is, it's not like you get rich overnight. It's a process. It's an expanding evolution of acquiring more. And how does everything begin? With an idea, with a question, with an inspiration. Ugh, there's so much more that I can get into, but I don't want to steal from the other chapters.
Yeah, no, we should stick with chapter 2. I just want to read the last paragraph. So you may be the poorest woman on the continent and be deeply in debt. You may have neither friends, influence, nor resources, but if you begin to do things in this way, you must infallibly begin to get rich. For like causes must produce like effects. And if you have no capital, you can get capital. If you are in the wrong business, you can get in the right business. If you are in the wrong location, you can get in the right location. And you can do so by beginning in your present business and in your present location to do things in the certain way which causes success. So there's no excuses, really. You can't say, now there was a bit in here where it's like, if you want to be a salmon fisherman, you're best to be in the Northwest, right? If you want to be an ice cream person, it's better to do it in a warmer climate. But, there's still people who eat ice cream in the winter time right now as we speak. I just had some last night. So really, there's no excuses for not taking this information and applying it. And I think a lot of times when people start to do the excuse thing, they're afraid and they're not sure what this certain way is, or they're not sure how to get out of their certain circumstances. But the mind is a place that you can go to at any time. And the mind doesn't know that it's not a real place. So you can create, while you're doing your mundane job that you don't want to do, you can actually create a little place in your mind that's you actually doing what you want to do. So you start to visualize what it is you want to do. So your mind and your subconscious start to believe that you're actually in that place. And if you're not physically in that place, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And then eventually that visualization needs to show up because you've made it a real place in your mind. And so then the universe is going to start to conspire to build that around you. And it might be, somebody at work makes a comment about an event that they're going to go to. And you're like, yeah, if it's aligned with the vision, you go do it. You say yes, and you show up. This is what, in our color mirrors world, we said a lot, say yes and show up, follow the breadcrumbs. When you start to see things and you become aware of what's going on in your surroundings, then it begins to match what's going on in your mind. And then you just follow it and you say, okay, yeah, let's give it a go. Let's try it. I love the fact that this is a no BS kind of book. Like, you can't give this man any excuse because he won't tolerate it. You can't now give us any excuses because we won't tolerate it for ourselves or for the people that decide to read this book and ask questions and show up in our conversations and show up in Jessica's Money Mind group and all of that. So I think it's important that we support one another and keep each other accountable to this information and just remind each other there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made. And it fills up the interspaces of the universe. And you just have to keep remembering that information, and that you need to have faith, because that's a recap from last chapter 1. Have faith without, like, believing without evidence is faith. Mm-hmm. And so if we have the opportunity to take a look at our bank account, you do the check-in and you're like, what's in there? And it's not what you want. Then you have to go to the bank account in your mind and fill it with money. And when you do that in your mind, then the universe has to fill it with money. And that's with anything, believing that you're healthy, because the true nature is you're healthy, you're not ill. Mm-hmm. And so I have had trouble myself believing without evidence, having faith. It's actually my birth path, my life path, is to keep the faith and trust in the universe, trust in my gut, trust in my subconscious, trust the downloads I get, trust everything. And that's hard, because when you're learning about trust, you have to you get betrayed in some way, so you know what that looks like. But this book is reinforcing the fact that you need to have faith in the unseen, faith in your ability to generate and visualize a scene that you want to be in, and create that future self for yourself. And then live as she does, as she would, as she is. Because some people believe like there's multiple aspects of ourselves living in different parallel lives, and you can quantum leap yourself over into a different parallel life where that world is Amy is this person. Yeah. And Jessica is this person. And it's, I think when you're living in the bridge between the two, like when there's a little bit of fear, there's a little bit of uncertainty, there's a little bit of wonkiness there, you just have to commit and go. And that's what this book helps do. And when I read it anyway.
Yeah. And me too. I understand, like, we are living in this simulation, this this game, this movie, if you will. And whatever Napoleon Hill says, one of his famous quotes, like whatever your mind can believe and conceive, it can achieve. It all has to do with your mind. And so, our minds are so powerful that we can literally create things from nothing, from this formless substance. And we'll get into more about that process and the certain way and all of that as we go along through each chapter.
Oh, can I say something here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to, I want to give a story about this in action, because I think a lot of people need a little bit of evidence before, as they're learning this material, right?
Yeah.
So I've been studying with a mentor who reintroduced me to this book, Dave Conway. And I was in a class where he was suggesting that if you go to the place in your mind where, I'm working on creating custom magazines for people. So my goal is I want to do 10 of them a month. And I'm focusing on those 10 people because when they have the magazines, they can actually up level their brand, right? So I'm sitting in bed at night and I'm visualizing these women coming, or men coming, whoever it is who wants their custom magazines. And I will stop repeating the little verse at the end and I start doing the little verse at the end. He says, commit it to the memory. That creed in there, like there is a thinking stuff and, that little verse, right? We'll get into that in chapter 4. But I do that. And when I stopped trying to memorize it and it became a part of me, and then I started to use that thing, like impress upon formless substance the thing you're thinking about, and it will come into fruition. And so I woke up many mornings over the last year that I've been studying this when I really focus on that, and there's an email from someone I did not know, or there's somebody saying, I talked about this with you and now I want to do this design. I'm ready to do this design. But it happens after I go in and I'm like, okay, I'm just calling people in. I am impressing my thought upon formless substance. I am waiting and accepting that to come back. So quite literally, I've had the biggest month. I've billed the biggest month I've had in my whole entire career in February.
Wow.
I billed $9,500 in February.
Wow.
And that was not even with 10 books.
Right.
Now, people need different ways to pay, and that's all great. But on my books, I billed 9,500. In my mind, I was building that money. I wanted to create 10,000 a month to start.
Yeah.
And so last month I hit 9,500. This month I'm at like billing, I think around 5,500. And it's still got, 10 more days till the end of the month. And there was a time where I was 10 days away from the month and there was no sign. Like there's like, now my time crunch is getting smaller. Like, how am I going to get those 10 or 5 or 2 or whatever? So I'm applying and it is working. And I'm mentoring with someone and it is working. And so we just need to keep the faith that what you put into your subconscious mind is going to happen. And I was blown away because I didn't even really think about it. I was like, just, okay, yeah, here's another one, and here's another one, and here's another one. And it never dawned until I did a little summary of my month in my accounting program. And I went, oh, okay, it's working.
Yeah. And when you get that feedback, that real life tangible data, it feels so affirming. And like you said, Amy, holding the vision with faith and purpose that it is coming, that it is on its way, is just as important as creating the thought and the impression.
Well, that it's here. That it's already here because you've gone.
Yeah, it's just formless, right? It's just formless, and we just need to realize it in 3D. And I've had the same experience with just holding the faith and not having those waves like I used to. Like back, years ago in my entrepreneurial journey, I would have these like waves, these big waves of like fear and doubt and uncertainty. Like, but once I started like plugging into this book and having an unwavering faith that it is here, it is coming, it is happening, like I don't have these emotional waves like I used to have. And it feels so liberating to not have to worry about business, about money, that it is here, it is coming, and it's happening with mathematical certainty. So to sum up this book, and I don't know if I know you had a comment on there that I felt like I could speak to, and maybe we could speak to. We actually did speak to this point last week, which is the fact that um, yes, there is abundance in all different ways. You know, an abundance of love, an abundance of connections and relationship and peace and harmony. Yes, that is all wonderful, and we wish that for everyone. And also, we need money to be able to buy things, do things, have things, and be things. Without money, that's just the way our world is set up. So if you are someone who you know, is maybe very spiritual, and you are of the mindset that, you know, I'm just content and satisfied with the peace in my life, the love and the harmony in my life, and, you know, I don't, you know, desire more money, you are going to be limited and stopped at some point when your soul has a desire to do something, to experience something, to go somewhere, and you don't have the money to do it. So we can say that, you know, we are satisfied with what we have and we are in peace and harmony with our life. But at the same time, you need money to do things, buy things, have things, to give, to experience, to expand. And there's nothing wrong with that. So to sum up chapter 2, which is there is a science to getting rich. Amy, you really nailed it with that last quote, which I'll maybe just sum up again. You may be the poorest woman on the continent and be deeply in debt. You may have neither friends, influence, nor resources. But if you begin to do things in this way, you must infallibly begin to get rich. For like causes always produce like effects.
So, oh, did you want to keep going?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So at the end of each chapter, you did some summary stuff and you also asked some questions. So one of the questions here that we can leave you with at the end is reflect on your current life and do your results reflect your desires? Are you giving up your life for duty? Because ultimately we want to do things that we want to do. And you can start by doing them up here in your subconscious mind. And then the last thing here is, if there was a path to get rich with mathematical certainty, would you be willing to do whatever it takes? And at the beginning of the book, there's a declaration. And we created this declaration because I feel if you read it and you sign it and you put a date to it, you're actually, you know, it's going to sink in a little bit more. And we're looking for people who are ready to sign this declaration, join your Money Mind group, Jessica's Money Mind group, and get in there and just keep the conversation going. And you need people that think the like-minded. So we're in there and we're having chats. And so it'd be great if you joined us. And
it would be awesome. It would be awesome. And just to clarify, the free Facebook group is called Money Code, the Science to Getting Rich. And in that group, there are 3 master classes where I talk about these principles and I break it down so that you can learn them quicker, easier, and begin to integrate them. So if you want to join that group, it's called Money Code, the Science of Getting Rich. Find it on Facebook. Submit your request to join and I will approve you as soon as possible so that you can start receiving more of this wisdom, this science, so that you can expand into greater levels of wealth and prosperity. I am so glad that you joined us, whether you're watching the replay or you're here live. This is going to be a powerful conversation. In fact, this is becoming a movement because it's not even about what I want. It's about what we deserve and what our right and responsibility is to becoming rich. Amy, thank you so much for joining me again. And I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.